Hello friends, today I'm going to answer the question, where is real estate cheap? So where is all the cheap real estate? I know you've seen it, I have, prices are extremely high, but where is real estate cheap at right now? Well, by the end of this video, you'll know precisely where to look for cheap real estate. You'll also be able to understand the factors that contribute to low prices on properties, and you'll also learn some of the strategies I'm utilizing with cheap real estate that are making me money right now. So why do some areas offer real estate at such bargains? And what economic or local conditions make these locations attractive for potential buyers? Let's jump into these topics. Let's answer these questions by first discussing what to consider when looking at cheap real estate. Secondly, I'm going to explain and tell you what areas have cheap real estate right now. And finally, I'm going to talk to you and show you some of the strategies that you can deploy when you find this cheap real estate. If you're ready to dive in, let's get after it. So if you're like most people in the United States right now, you've seen real estate prices are so high. And if you live in a city where you're just exhausted with the prices of real estate and you say to yourself, God, maybe I can't get a home. Maybe real estate investing is dead or gone. Where can I find cheap real estate? You're not alone. There's been a lot of people with that mindset, and they're looking at certain areas to get into real estate with these cheaper prices. And even though real estate prices are high in most areas, is there an expected pullback at all in these real estate prices? We really don't know. I think we would hope so, but for the most part, it's really hard to determine that. And if you look at the economic data, it might even say that there is going to be a pullback, but crazier things have happened. And so the ultimate answer is we really do not know. But are there places where real estate is cheap right now? Well, there absolutely is. And before we dive into those areas, I want to explain what we are talking about when we say cheap real estate. So for this discussion, I'm talking about real estate that is under $100,000. Now there is cheap real estate and then there is cheap real estate. The latter is cheap because it is battered or hammered, and the condition of the home is such that it might take an actual miracle in order to get it to a place where you can actually live in it, rent it, or sell it. And in those scenarios where it's that cheap, it might even be so bad that the best fix and flipper out there might not be able to resurrect the property from its state of being so cheap to where they could turn around and sell it. Now the former is inexpensive because it might be in an area that is less desirable, or that area might be immune to the highs and lows and the fluctuation of real estate prices going way up or going down. Or they might be in rural areas that aren't super close to metropolitan areas where prices seem to be much higher. But as you'll see, there are some properties and homes that are considered the former, the cheaper real estate, that aren't too far away from some of these metropolitan areas. But ultimately, when we look at cheaper real estate, we're talking about supply and demand, right? If there is an excess of supply, the only way to get a differentiator in one home compared to another one is price, right? So a large supply, typically prices are going to go down. If there's a very minimal supply, very few homes on the market, and there's a high demand of people wanting to buy homes, the prices are going to go up. It might be less of a demand in some of these areas, and there might be more supply coming on the market, especially as we see some of these baby boomers that are maybe getting out of homes, getting into assisted living homes, or living with family, or just not needing a home, maybe getting in something a little bit smaller that they don't have to worry about the lawn or maintenance or upkeep. So we are seeing this happening throughout the United States right now. So which of these areas currently have cheap real estate? Well, I'll tell you, one area right now that I've been looking and actually buying some properties is the Midwest. We'll talk a little bit more about the Midwest in a second, but when you look at the prices of real estate throughout the United States, there's something called the Sun Belt. This is from California all the way down the southern part of the United States over to Florida, up to the Carolinas, and that Sun Belt typically has higher priced homes. That's where more people are living and want to live, where more of a population density is at because of the warmer weather, maybe the larger cities, the higher employment opportunities there, but I'll talk about that in just a second. But in the Midwest, areas around St. Louis, Indianapolis, just maybe 45 minutes to an hour from some of these metropolitan areas, even in Ohio, Illinois. So these are some places that I've seen some cheap real estate that have actually put offers and bought some homes in these different areas that are below $100,000. I've even seen a habitable home that had a renter in it that I was able to get under contract for below $50,000. But like I said, it's not necessarily defined to one area. Midwest is where I'm looking now, but I have looked in other areas in Louisiana, in Texas, Alabama, Alabama, Mississippi, I've seen some areas that have cheaper real estate that you can get under $100,000. So it's not necessarily designated to one state or another. So I really do think you can find cheap real estate in lots of different areas, but here are some things that I really believe you need to consider when you're thinking about buying cheap real estate. So the first thing to consider is you want to have some proximity to a major metropolitan area. I mean, if you're 3 hours from the biggest city, it's gonna be a lot harder to find somebody to go into that place. Now, I think with what happened with COVID, there's a lot of people that prefer or want to move to rural communities maybe than before, but still, if you're within an hour of a major metropolitan area that has all the amenities and maybe an airport, it's got the Costco's, it's got the things that you need, that's probably an area that I would look at first. And I'm not saying you can't acquire properties that are farther away from that. That just seems to be the distance that makes sense for a lot of people. And here's the other thing to consider. If you're close to a metropolitan area and that metropolitan area starts to expand and grow, that area that you're at could be engulfed in the city or close to the city. Prices start to go up. There's a strategy early on in the 40s and 50s where there was people who would buy land or property just outside of Las Vegas or some of these other major metropolitan areas. And as the city grew over time, the places that they had property, the values would start to skyrocket because people were leaving the cities and wanted to buy property in the suburbs. And eventually those areas became the suburbs or developed into the suburbs because they were in a closer proximity to a major metropolitan area. Another thing to consider is crime. As I've looked at some of these cheaper properties, as I've done my research, I've thought, man, this is a great price on a home. It looks good. I don't have to put a lot of lipstick on this house. I can go and purchase it right now. And I go look at the area and it is a pretty rough area that's riddled with crime. And so being able to understand, if you're looking in areas, you've got to understand the crime dynamic. And there's a lot of websites out there that you can go look and see what the crime is in that area. But doing some research on your own when you're looking for cheaper homes is going to be really important to understand the crime that could potentially be in that area. So now that you know the area, you know a home, you find a home, what strategy could you deploy with some of these cheaper homes? Here's one that I'm utilizing right now, and I love this strategy. It's called slow flip. So what is a slow flip, right? Well, the goal is you're going to turn around and flip this home, but not as quick as a potential fix and flip or just a traditional flip or wholesaling, but you find a property, and here's exactly what I'm doing. I am going and looking for properties between $40,000 to $70,000, maybe a bit more, but my ratio on buying these homes and getting an offer accepted is about 1 to every 15 offers that I put out there because I'm asking 35 to 40% below the asking price. And I want homes that I don't have to put a lot of work into. I might spend a little bit of money to get it up to par, put a little lipstick on it to make it look nice, but overall, I want a home that I can purchase and move somebody into, a renter into, because that's the goal with a slow flip, right? So you get a home, and I'm buying that home with cash from a private money lender, and my goal is to pay back that private money lender within 5, 6, or 7 years. And they're charging me a little higher interest rate because it's private money, but I found some that are willing to take 8, 9, 10%, which is pretty dang good. Now, once I have that home, I am looking for a buyer who wants to come in and own that home, and they don't have to worry about traditional financing at all. They don't have to put a ton of money down as a down payment because I will become the bank. And I'm going to finance that home over a 30-year term. So the goal behind this is I'm buying this home as a car with a loan that's paid off in 5, 6, 7 years, but I'm selling the home as a mortgage, right? So it's not something where you make a ton of money in those first 5, 6, 7 years. That's why it's called a slow flip, because it's a slow burn to cash flow. But let me show you this. When you're paying that, let's say that your interest rate and your money that you're paying and it's amortized out over 5, 6, 7 years, your payment might be $900 a month to this person on a home that you bought for $50,000. Now, I'm terming this out over 30 years for this person, and I might need to charge them a higher interest rate, but they're coming with very little money down. But let's say that their monthly payment to me is maybe $950. Now, with a slow flip, you're not making a ton of money, but after that 5th, 6th, or 7th year is up, all of that money comes to you every single month. And if you have 10 of those, 20 of those, you are making really good money every single month, and you've set yourself up for a really good cash flow scenario over a long period of time. The other cool thing about a slow flip is we're not utilizing a traditional purchase and sales agreement. We're talking about land contracts, which I'll explain more in further videos. But essentially, a land contract allows that person to buy the home from you, but they do not take ownership of that home until they've made that last payment, but they can secure the home. They are in charge of the maintenance, the repairs, the taxes, the insurance, but you can act as the landlord. If they stop making payments, you can evict them and kick them out. So a land contract is a really good tool to use when doing slow flips. Now, these are some strategies I've employed with cheap real estate, but I'd be interested in what you've done. So please comment below. Let's engage in a dialogue. And as always, just for coming and watching the video, I've got a free gift for you, 100% free, no questions asked, no gimmicks. It's aaronsfreetraining.com. It's a free short-term rental calculator. You put in the price of the home, the expenses, the income, and it spits out to you, does all the work, and lets you know whether it's a good deal or not, and it's 100% free. Once again, I appreciate you stopping by. Have an amazing day.